What if a movie didn't just try to scare you, but tried to change you? What if a film about the mind went so far that even its own creators got frightened by where it ended up? Altered States wasn't just a sci-fi thriller. It was a cinematic experiment that nearly collapsed under its own ambition. Chaos erupted on set, creative alliances shattered, and one ending was so unsettling it quietly disappeared. This is the story behind that turmoil. These are 20 hidden truths behind Altered States, 1980. Band secret ending and the truth they tried to hide, including details buried in plain sight and the ending they never wanted you to fully see. Stay to the end, because the final revelation reframes everything. And if you're ready, let's begin. Fact number 1. This film began as a scientific dare, not a script. Altered States doesn't start as entertainment. It starts as provocation. The source material comes from a scientist asking whether human consciousness can move backward through evolution. Not metaphorically, literally. What audiences didn't know is that the screenplay preserves that confrontational spirit. Early drafts read less like a movie and more like a hypothesis pushed to the edge of plausibility. Scenes are structured as experiments. Dialogue feels clinical by design, not warmth, but inquiry. The production leans into this coldness, even when it risks alienation. Studio readers express concern early on. This doesn't feel safe. It doesn't resolve cleanly, but that's the point. The film isn't asking viewers to relax, it's daring them to follow. From the very first frame, Altered States signals that comfort is not on the menu. Curiosity is, and curiosity, unchecked, becomes dangerous. Fact number 2. The director and writer fell apart before filming ended. It wasn't just creative tension, it was total collapse. What audiences didn't know is that the director and the original writer stopped speaking during production. Not figuratively, literally. Communication breaks down so completely that messages are relayed through intermediaries. Script changes are made without approval. Intent is questioned daily. The director pushes visual abstraction. The writer insists on intellectual rigor. It wasn't art versus ego. It was philosophy versus cinema. Each believed the other was betraying the project's soul. The fallout becomes so severe that the writer publicly disowns the film. That rupture isn't hidden, it's embedded. You can feel it in the movie's split personality, half-controlled experiment, half-sensory overload, not unified, but fractured, and that fracture becomes part of the experience itself. Fact number 3. The isolation tank was a production nightmare. The sensory deprivation tank isn't just a prop, it's a logistical hazard. What audiences didn't know is that the tank scenes are among the most difficult to shoot. Lighting behaves unpredictably, sound distorts, water levels must remain exact. The actor spends hours submerged in total darkness, not simulated, real. Crew members rotate because the environment is so taxing. Every take requires recalibration. And yet the director refuses shortcuts. No cheats, no visual tricks. If the character is isolated, the actor must be isolated too. The result is authenticity, but at a cost. Fatigue sets in. Tempers rise. The tank becomes less of a set piece and more of a pressure cooker, mirroring the film's themes in real time. Fact number 4. The visual effects team had no rule book. This is before digital safety nets, no templates, no presets. What audiences didn't know is that the visual effects team invents techniques on the fly. Chemical reactions are filmed in macro. Pigments swirl in liquids. Light passes through glass and smoke. Nothing is labeled. Nothing is guaranteed to work twice. Dailies are watched in silence. Sometimes they're unusable. Sometimes they're mesmerizing. The process is chaotic, but intentional. The goal isn't realism, it's disorientation, not clarity, but transformation. Each effect must feel organic, as if reality itself is malfunctioning. The lack of control is the point, and that lack of control spreads, from the lab scenes to the production itself. Fact number 5. The lead performance is built on exhaustion. This role doesn't rely on charm, it relies on depletion. What audiences didn't know is that the lead actor structures his performance around physical and mental fatigue. Long days, repetitive takes, minimal breaks. He wants weariness to seep into posture and speech. The director supports this approach, even when it slows production. The character's unraveling isn't acted, it's accumulated, scene by scene. By the midpoint, the performance changes subtly. Not louder, quieter, less certain. That's not coincidence, it's design. The body carries the story as much as the dialogue, and the camera stays close enough to catch every crack. Fact number 6. Test audiences didn't know how to react. Early screenings don't go smoothly. What audiences didn't know is that some test viewers sit in silence after the lights come up. No applause, no complaints, just confusion. Others debate whether what they watched even qualifies as a narrative. Studio executives take notes. Words like challenging and alienating appear repeatedly. There's pressure to soften the edges, clarify the meaning, explain the imagery, but the filmmakers resist. Explanation would betray the experience. The confusion isn't a flaw, it's the effect. The film isn't meant to be solved, it's meant to be endured. Fact number 7. The sound design is engineered to unsettle. Listen closely. The soundtrack doesn't guide emotion, it destabilizes it. What audiences didn't know is that sound cues are intentionally misaligned with visuals. Crescendos arrive too early, silence lingers too long, familiar tones warp without warning. The goal isn't fear, it's uncertainty. Your senses can't synchronize. That disconnection mirrors the protagonist's internal state. Even dialogue is sometimes buried, forcing attention elsewhere, not to punish the viewer, but to disorient them. Sound becomes another experimental variable, not a comfort tool. Fact number 8. The lab sets reflect philosophical conflict. Nothing in the lab feels welcoming. That's deliberate. What audiences didn't know is that the production design is built around opposition. Hard angles versus organic shapes, sterile whites against chaotic textures. The lab isn't just a workplace. It's a battleground between control and curiosity. Every hallway feels slightly too narrow. Every room feels overlit. The environment presses inward. Characters argue about ideas, but the space argues too. It insists on order, while the experiments push toward chaos. The set itself becomes an antagonist, quiet, rigid, unyielding. Fact number 9. The film quietly questions progress itself. This isn't a story about advancement. It's about regression. What audiences didn't know is that the film's central fear isn't failure, it's success. What happens if the experiment works? If knowledge strips away identity? The movie doesn't celebrate discovery, it interrogates it. Each breakthrough carries loss, relationships strain, language fails. The further the character goes, the less human he appears. Not monstrous, something worse, undefined. That ambiguity is the warning. Progress without restraint doesn't elevate, it dissolves. Fact number 10. This is where viewers either commit or walk away. By this point, the film makes no apologies, and neither do we. If you're still watching, go ahead and like and subscribe, because movies like this don't get made anymore. What audiences didn't know is that the midpoint was designed as a point of no return. From here on, logic loosens, structure bends. The film stops explaining itself. It trusts the audience to follow or be left behind. Studio notes suggest pulling back. The director pushes forward. This is the moment where Altered States declares its intent, not to entertain everyone, but to fully engage those willing to go further. Fact number 11. Practical effects replace explanation. There's a reason the transformations feel tactile. They are. What audiences didn't know is that the production avoids verbal explanation wherever possible. Instead, physical change tells the story. Makeup appliances, lighting shifts, movement patterns. The body becomes the narrative. This choice eliminates safety rails. You're not told what's happening, you're shown, and showing is riskier. It invites interpretation. It invites discomfort. The film leans into that risk, trusting the audience to feel rather than understand. Fact number 12. The film rejects a traditional hero arc. There's no victory here, no triumph. What audiences didn't know is that early drafts included a more conventional resolution. Those pages are discarded. The final version refuses uplift. Growth doesn't lead to clarity, it leads to fragmentation. The protagonist doesn't conquer the unknown. He's altered by it, permanently. That decision unsettles viewers expecting closure, but it aligns with the film's thesis. Some doors, once opened, don't close cleanly. Fact number 13. The editing embraces disruption. Continuity is sacrificed for sensation. What audiences didn't know is that editors intentionally break visual rhythm. Cuts arrive mid-motion. Scenes end abruptly. Transitions feel unfinished. This isn't sloppiness, it's strategy. The audience's sense of time fractures alongside the characters. The movie doesn't flow, it jolts. That jolt keeps you alert, unbalanced, engaged. Editing becomes another psychological tool, not a smoothing mechanism. Fact number 14. The film's reputation changed over time. Initial reactions are mixed, then something shifts. What audiences didn't know is that Altered States gains respect slowly through repetition. Viewers revisit it, notice patterns, reinterpret scenes. What once felt chaotic begins to feel intentional. The film doesn't age quietly. It challenges new generations differently, not as spectacle, but as inquiry. Its reputation grows not because it comforts, but because it endures. Fact number 15. The final act was considered too abstract. As the climax approaches, resistance peaks. What audiences didn't know is that studio discussions intensify here. The imagery becomes symbolic. Language breaks down. There's concern viewers will disengage entirely. Suggestions are made to ground the finale, add explanation, reduce abstraction. The filmmakers refuse. The ending must feel unmoored, because that's the point. Returning to clarity would undermine the journey. Fact number 16. Multiple endings were seriously discussed. This isn't rumor, it's documented debate. What audiences didn't know is that alternate conclusions are drafted and considered. Some emphasize reconciliation, others restore order. One version leans heavily into scientific consequence, another into emotional resolution. None satisfy the director. Each feels dishonest, too neat, too reassuring. The chosen ending remains unsettling because it refuses to resolve the experiment. It simply stops it. Fact number 17. The chosen ending was softened without announcement. Here's where it gets quiet. What audiences didn't know is that subtle adjustments are made to the final cut, not obvious changes. Tonal ones, shots trimmed, reactions shortened. The goal isn't censorship. It's mitigation. The original intent remains, but its sharpest edges are dulled. No press release, no explanation. The ending stays strange, but less confrontational than originally envisioned. Fact number 18. Viewers sense something is missing. Even without knowing why, audiences feel it. What audiences didn't know is that the unease many report comes from absence. The ending feels incomplete because it is, not broken, curated. Something was held back. That missing piece lingers in the mind. You can't name it, but you feel it. And that feeling becomes the film's final effect. Fact number 19. The ending redefines the entire film. Rewatch it with this in mind. What audiences didn't know is that the final moments aren't closure. They're containment. The story doesn't conclude. It stabilizes, temporarily. The experiment isn't defeated, it's paused. That reframes everything that came before. The journey wasn't toward an answer, it was toward a threshold, and stopping just short of crossing it. Fact number 20. The ending. They released is a compromise. This is the truth that reshapes Altered States. What audiences didn't know is that the ending you see isn't the ending they fully wanted. It's the ending that survived negotiation, between vision and caution, between provocation and acceptability. The film ends where it does not because the questions are answered, but because they become too dangerous to continue. And that restraint, intentional or not, becomes the movie's most haunting statement. Altered States leaves you altered not by what it shows, but by what it withholds. It's a film that dares to stop mid-thought and trust the echo. If this pulled you deeper, share it with someone who still believes movies should take risks. And remember, some experiments don't explode, they just stay with you.